All right, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about retirement planning. Um, Retirement planning is, broad topic. We've talked about all kinds of financial planning, and generally leads up to retirement. And that's you've kind of won in life. You obviously live long enough to retire, and hopefully you've enjoyed life, and now you have some money you want to perhaps cut back on the working, unless it's something you really enjoy. Before we go on to that, though, a couple things I want to talk about. I mentioned last week when we were talking about mutual funds, I said, we'll go to, I'll take you to a site and show you some things about mutual funds and also some things about diversification. And there's a couple things I didn't really talk about. One was DCA, dollar cost averaging, which is a good method for getting into a fund. Right now, there's been some dips, and there will always be dips in the market. But if you're always investing sort of a fixed dollar amount or a fixed percentage of your income, they say that works out best over the long run, because you buy a little more when when the price is low, when there's a dip, and when stuff's expensive, you're buying a little less. So in essence, it works out. You can also just put money into a sort of a cash account, a little bit more aggressive strategy if you think you're good at market timing. Most people, though, the real people who've been doing this for a long time have found that market timing just doesn't really work that well. Market timing would be, watching, and when the market's down, you jump in. But a lot of tough issues. If people could do that, they would, and they'd all be rich. But most people don't. And like in a falling market, they talk about trying to catch a falling knife, where things are descending, so you jump in, and then it goes down even further. Or a market's rallying, very bullish, and they talk about FOMO, fear of missing out. People jump in and they dump a bunch of money in, and that's very apparent in crypto, where people will get clobbered, and God bless them, because that's where the rest of us make money. Because if you're going to sell your Bitcoin for a couple $100,000, well, there's got to be a buyer, and how that buyer is going to end up profiting from that, probably not going to happen. Kind of a Ponzi scheme when it gets down to it, but whatever. Bitcoin's maybe a little different, since it's got some intrinsic type things, which is completely up for argument. So anyway, one thing when I was talking about diversification, the U.S. market right now is not super diversified in terms of performance. People are going, the stock market's hitting all times high. This is from 2023, but it's continuing into 2024. The Magnificent Seven, a certain number of companies are doing super, super well, and the other companies are just kind of treading water. So the seven were, Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Tesla. Anyway, NVIDIA is actually holding pretty strong. I mentioned, I'm not giving an investment advice here, but I did put in some trailing stops on both NVIDIA and my Tractor Supply. If they descend more than 10%, I'm out. But if they go up, my trailing stop follows along. So, there are some good applications for stuff like that. But anyway, all in the press. Other things going on, I put out that announcement about a couple movies. Kind of interesting. Your personal finance doesn't necessarily have to be boring. This is something when people go, oh, wow, it's amazing, crypto's going up. Yeah, it's only amazing because it's done it every friggin' time, and this is going to be the fourth cycle. Will it repeat? I'm betting on it. But anyway, who knows? We're somewhere climbing already. So anyway, there's not everything is completely random. I'm not telling you to get involved in crypto. But anyway. What else? Retirement planning. Oh, and just to close out the mutual fund thing, which is pretty much a constituent of retirement planning. Most retirement funds, 401ks and stuff are done in mutual funds. So I want to show you a little bit about what's available on one of the websites. Let me get out of this real quick, and I should have this teed up. So here's Fidelity. Again, I'm not shilling for these guys, but I'm used to their website. But you can see that Fidelity, again, they don't want you going other places to make purchases. They want all your money, all your time, everything focused on their website. And all the companies are like this. So they have a few Fidelity branded products that they'd like to steer you to, but they don't want you, wanting something that's unavailable to you. And you can just see, I mean, let's get down to the bottom here. So there's 8 pages. We're only in the, well, it's not necessarily alphabetical, but tons and tons of funds. And then some of these, fund families, these are some of the companies involved. You can see, I mean, this is just, again, there are so many families out there. Let's step back from that one. Let's look at, I talked about sustainable things where you can pick funds that have that as part of it. ETFs, no load funds, very easily to do. Most things are like that. Rankings, ratings, so now we're talking Morningstar, fund features, volatility. Again, these are not absolutes, but they're going to try. Again, they're going to try and steer you towards their funds. Morningstar, ranks funds, so only ones that get 4 and 5 stars out of that. So that narrows your choices down to 786. If you go for the big one, you're looking at 2672. Let me see if I've got this one. Yeah, I've already selected into this one, but you can pick funds based upon what you want to do. International, 1,363 different funds that are available. Sectors. Okay, I had U.S. equities selected, which only, narrowed it down to 2,600. Let's look at sectors real quick. And now we're at sectors and U.S. sectors. So we'll turn off the U.S. part. Almost 600 of them. Let's see what the sectors available are. Communications. I mean, let's say you have some expertise. You know something about this. And you're saying, yep, I think technology is going to, do super well. So that's the one I want. Actually, I just deselected it. But let's deselect these other guys. We're going to look at technology real quick. And this is kind of on the fly. We're going to go live here. But I think we're going to find that these highly rated technology funds have pretty much the same companies in them. So, granted, you can jump down into semiconductors. I mean, you can get really into the weeds on this stuff and figure out, let's see, Fidelity Select Technology. This will give us a little bit more information. You can see they're up, 24% or so. Hypothetical growth, yeah, if everything continues. But what I'm looking for, I mean, there's a lot of information on here. Month highs, all the rest of that. Who's the manager, if you happen to know them. But top 10 holdings. So, look familiar? Microsoft, NVIDIA, Apple, Salesforce, Marvel. Anyway, a couple other folks, Cisco. So that's the offering from Fidelity. Hopefully I don't go back all the way out of this. Let's look at somebody else's technology fund. Technology opportunities. This might be more startup kind of stuff. Look at that. 43%. Yikes. I mean, again, 53%. Some of this stuff, I mean, it just makes that savings rate look pretty pathetic. Now, not all years are the same, but oh, look at this. So you got your diversity, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple. You see what I mean? Okay. Oh, I've got mutual funds with 4 different companies. And what do they all have? The same Magnificent 7 to start it out. That's how they got that performance. AMD, another chip maker, But anyway, it's all cool. But just be aware, if you think you have diversity, just because the company name at the top line is different, their holdings are probably largely the same. And if they all do super well, I mean, I see no reason to stop. I'm not selling NVIDIA. I love it to death. But I would not, whatever. And I'm not saying you need diversity for diversity's sake. I'm just saying, I know that was one thing that kind of was eye-watering when I first saw that, when somebody was talking to me about diversity. Okay, retirement planning, jumping in. So Social Security is what, that's kind of the fallback, the safety net. But, eating top ramen in the dark, waiting for your Walmart greeter job is that's probably not where you want to find yourself. So if you're relying 100% on Social Security, they're pretty upfront about how their program is not necessarily completely funded. It's not solvent basically. Now they'll find some money somewhere, but they'll also make some cutbacks, which is kind of a foul because you put that money in there yourself. It's not income based. The amount of money you contribute is based upon your income, and the amount of your benefit coming back to you is based upon your income. But they're actually talking about means testing, meaning it's not popular politically, and it won't happen to this generation because this generation's still out there and still voting. But when you're not paying attention and you're in your 20s and 30s, you'll see them, well, starting in, 2035, there's going to be some changes, and there won't be a bunch of outcry till 2035, but by then it's too late. Social Security also provides funds for disabled folks, so good on them, but is that appropriate for, kind of a welfare program to be pulled from Social Security? Probably another source of government funds ought to be used for that rather than tapping Social Security, which is maybe not quite right. One-time payment to the spouse. This is in a survivor situation. Spouse can get paid as well, obviously. Stay-at-home spouse, something like that. Children, if they're still in school. So it's a little broader than just strictly retirement. Retirement dependents. So there's number of quarters you have. 40% of your annual income is what they figure. Reduced benefits at 62. Believe me, when I get there, I'm taking every dime as soon as possible because I'm just not that confident that they won't push things out as they get closer. The other thing about Social Security is, there's a lot of math involved where you get more money if you wait till age 67, but you collect for a shorter period of time. So, again, they will entice you, but maybe limited income. If you make more than like 20 grand, they're going to want to start taking a portion of it, which again is kind of disincentivizes people from working. If people are productive and want to work. Anyway, again, they didn't ask me. Concerns about retirement benefits in the future. So COVID kind of fixed this, that people aren't necessarily living that much longer. Continues to grow. Yeah, the baby boomers are still out there. And most people are, realizing that Social Security is a pretty meager source of funds, and they need to do something else, which hopefully you will do it as well. So Social Security itself, they're upfront about it. They're not promising, an extravagant retirement. They're not doing any of that. They have a website that you can go to. Again, I think I can go control and come on, let's go. Or I can just do it manually. There we go. But you can go to the website. You can, prepare, check eligibility status, get a benefits estimate, plan for retirement. So I think you should probably go to this site when you're trying to write your term paper. Because when you say, I'm not going to rely on Social Security, that's not quite good enough. You should know I'm not going to rely on Social Security because it's, according to the estimate, it's not going to give me that much money. And, I'll perhaps, want something else. But anyway, the information's free, available. Just got to punch it in and it'll give you an estimate. All right, employee-sponsored retirement plans. So you may realize that there used to be a pretty extravagant employer pension type system, fixed benefits and all that stuff. Yeah, that's kind of gone by the wayside, and it was kind of expensive, and it's just kind of one of those things where things have gotten worse, not better. Part of it is the employee's own fault. I mean, a small part of it, but employers have found that when given more money versus more benefits, most people opt for more money. If somebody says, we'll give you 80 grand, but great benefits, or we'll give you 100 grand with no benefits, to be competitive, they found that most people gravitate towards the more money. So fair enough. What you do with that extra 20,000 is on you. What you should do with it is put it towards your retirement plan. But anyway, and they will incentivize you slightly to do that with tax deferred type things. But anyway, deciding to help you save for retirement. So when they say sponsored, it can be just from a matching program, or it can be a full, here's your retirement. In this one, this is one where the employees and the employers contribute. Imposed for early withdrawal. Yeah, if you take money out before age 62, which you can do, 59 and a half, which you can do. You can't get Social Security till 62, but if you're putting money in a tax-deferred account, you can pull it out at age 59 and a half without a penalty. But there's even exceptions for that. If you need money, there's a whole list of exceptions. And some of them are, they're called hardship withdrawals, but some of them are not that big a hardship. Like first-time home buyer, sometimes you can pull money out of your retirement account to buy that home. So, it's check into things or just take a loan against your 401k money. Like I say, I've done that a number of times. So if you withdraw the money, you take a distribution, and you're not 59 and a half, typically you're going to pay a 10% penalty. They just, you withdraw 50 grand and they give you 45, keep the rest just for, as a penalty. And then they throw that 45 grand into your regular income. And so now all of a sudden your income's up, and then you get taxed even more on that. So it's kind of rough when you're doing early withdrawals. Now, if you're doing a loan, you're not taking a distribution. You're just taking money out of that account and you're going to put it back in. And there are no charges for that. You pay an interest rate, but you, in essence, pay that interest right back to yourself. And the government's not getting involved. It doesn't involve penalties. It doesn't involve taxes. It's just, I've done it, 5-10 times. I mean, I've been literally, I shouldn't do this, but I was driving down the road and did it on my phone, and needed 20 grand for a business thing, and bada bing. There are some limits. You can never have more than 50% of your funds withdrawn, and I think there is a limit maybe at 50 grand, something like that. But I never approached it, and it was perfect. And they just start taking out of your paycheck, and I think the term is normally like 4 or 5 years or something. So not a bad way to do things. But anyway, each to his own. So your contributions are tax deferred. So this would be in a 401k, a IRA, there's all sorts of different plans for self-employed people, but some sort of tax deferred plan, meaning that let's say you're that person making 100 grand again, you put 20,000 in your 401k each year. When you go to pay taxes, you're only paying taxes on 80 grand. That other 20 grand is not taxed yet. Now, since it's never been taxed, when you go to withdraw that money in retirement, you will be taxed on it then. But the theory is that when you're in retirement, your income's not that high, so your tax burden won't be as high. So you're kind of betting on a few things. One, that you're maybe not going to be working when you get into retirement age, which isn't necessarily the case. And then also that tax rates are going to be lower when you're in retirement age, or stay the same, which is, again, maybe not a great plan. But what else? Defined benefit plan. Now this is the one where, old school, where you get just, you're working for maybe a teacher, maybe federal government. You see some government jobs do this, where they have a retirement that you don't have to contribute to. They'll probably have an additional, some sort of 401k thing on the side, but your main part of retirement is just based upon the number of years you're there. Now, the thing with one of those things, and a lot of these retirement plans, even contributions, I've worked for a couple different firms where I'll say they'll give you 5% towards your retirement if you put in 3. So you end up with like total of 8% of your salary going into the retirement plan, yet you only had to fund 3. you need to do that. If there is a match, that's called a match, right? You put in some, they put in the other. If you don't take advantage of the match, you're working for less than your coworkers, foolishly. Do what you got to do, but make sure you put that money in there so you get the match. Now, most companies, and specifically like in a defined benefit plan, they're not going to allow you just to be somebody who comes walking into the company, works for a year, and then says, yeah, I'm done here. Give me all my retirement money, my small portion that I've earned. That small portion is, most cases, going to be nothing. They're going to say, nope, you weren't vested. Vesting is a term. For example, one of the companies I work with, a defense contractor, if you left after 3 years, under 3 years, you got nothing. If you left out after 3 years, you got 50% of what the employer put in. They can't take what you put in, obviously, but they can take their portion. If you stayed more than 5 years, then you got 100% of what they put in. And anyway, when you reach that point, they said, okay, you are vested. And that's what it is. Portion of the money is part. Yep, so that explains it pretty well. Anyway, just more terminology. You don't really see these terms used that much. They'll talk about a pension plan or they'll talk about a self-directed plan. And those are the more common terms. The pension plan is typically one that's just provided strictly by the employer. You don't have to do anything. Other types are, the employee involvement plans where there's a matching thing, where there's maybe just a 401k. So things can change. So we've been talking about retirement from the get-go. Yeah, people do wait too long. You need to start early. You need to come up with a systematic, pay yourself first plan. So quite easy. Defined contribution. Yep. Treat it like it's extra income. So, literally, if you're making $100,000 and they're going to match your, with say 5% or something, you're actually working for 105. So, definitely do it. Investing in funds in your retirement account. Yep. So they'll usually give you some fund family, and they'll say, okay, you can get everything within Fidelity or something. And then, one company I worked for, they actually said you could put a portion of it in self-directed, which I jumped on because, again, I made way more money than those people did because I was able to get into more aggressive stuff. We were in a bull market at the time. I'm not saying that would have worked, in every era, but the time when I was in my prime earning years, yeah, it was very good. So anyway, composition of retirement portfolio. What they're trying to show here is that when you're young, you can take more risk, right? You should have a higher proportion of aggressive funds. This is the time to get off the porch and not be stupid, not be speculating. They're saying investments. They're not saying speculation. But you should be over, a regular savings account with large amounts of cash in it, making you minuscule interest that's getting eroded by inflation is not a good strategy at that point. And then they're showing this medium risk thing, and then they're showing low risk as you're older after you're living on that. Each to his own. If you have a pension, you have a guaranteed income, you got a big nest egg, will get you up. Maybe you still want to stay aggressive in your investing, but again, that's up to you. Pardon me. And then they also have some mutual funds that are like life cycle funds, they call them. And, they'll have a retirement target date. They'll say retirement 2050, meaning that you're going to quit working in 2050, whatever, 26 years from now. And so their fund will have you in more aggressive things, and then it'll be, they'll kind of program this out for you if you're buying off on this whole proposal. A lot of people do. You can tell I'm not one of those. So 401k, yep. This was 2020, so the numbers go up all the time. I should update the slide, but we're still going to be in the $20,000 range. So matching again. So here's the numbers that are reiterating: 59.5, and contribution, yeah, because people will fudge stuff. So employee contribution limited to 56. So fair enough. For most of us, that's fine. You start getting, when you're a highly compensated employee, they start getting into stock options and different things that are more financially advantageous for everybody. So hopefully you'll get in that group. Yep. So there's that 10% penalty, 59.5. Now a Roth, it still says 401k and all that, but it's quite different. What happens on these is you pay the money in after taxes. So, let's say in this example, and you can have both. You can have a combination of Roth and 401 and straight 401k or IRA, but those accounts are going to be separate. But in a Roth, you put in money after taxes, so you've already paid the taxes on that money, and the beauty of this is it's still the same sort of retirement setup where it's got to stay in there till 59.5. But when you withdraw money out of a Roth, no matter how much it's appreciated, you're not taxed on it because the taxes have already been paid. So, I've got a piece of property that I don't know, it's a good chunk. I paid about 50 grand for it, and I've got it on the market for about 300, and I'll walk away with all that money because it was a Roth. So if you can pull it off, it's quite good. There's probably some, if they take away anything, it may be the Roth, because that is a pretty good deal. I definitely like Roths. So contributions taxed when contributed, but not when withdrawn. 403B, so you're going to see all these different variations that you don't have to memorize all these, but this is just basically a 401k for people who are like teachers or, maybe other public non-profit organizations. Non-profit organization is kind of a joke. There's a lot of profits being made in non-profit organizations, believe me. But that's how they're characterized. People are pulling down $400,000 or $500,000 a year salaries working for non-profits. So don't confuse charity with non-profit, but it's a business structure. 501(c)(3) type companies. A SEP, again, they have these different plans, these same sort of tax deferred plans for basically whatever business situation you find yourself in. But the same constraints. Employee can't contribute it, but the employer can. 100, so the other one was 10 employees. This one's 100 or fewer. Profit sharing. This is a different type thing where you've got some skin in the game. And then you also get employee-owned companies. But it's a good way maybe to motivate your employees. Different way to, add to your benefits. Employee stock ownership program. So I mentioned this. I may have added this. My problem is if you say work for some huge firm, whatever, pick something Alaska, maybe GCI, and not that GCI is strictly Alaskan, but anyway, big presence, and you've got your job with GCI, and then you're doing the employee stock ownership program, so you're buying shares in GCI. You got a lot of eggs in one basket. GCI is probably a great company, but if they go bad, you not only have your job, your income, but you also have your stocks. And anyway, I did it with my previous company because they were offering the shares to me at a 5% discount. I wasn't a big fan of the company, and I didn't want the diversification, so I definitely bought all the shares I could and sold them as soon as they were delivered to me. As soon as I had my first date, so I'd bring it in and sell it, and they sold it to me for a 5% discount. So I just saw it as another source of income. It worked out to be about, I guess it was $700 a year. Not big money, but hey, it's guaranteed money because the 5% differential. So anytime, and you guys are much more common now to switch employers, there's a couple words you need to know. Anytime you're working with IRAs, 401ks, any of that kind of stuff, you're moving from the company and you want to take your retirement, money with you that you've got invested with them. But you just have to know the terms rollover and distribution. Rollover is what you want to do in almost all cases. It means it's 401k money, IRA money, and it stays as that. It just gets rolled over to a different company, different account. They'll cut you a check, but it won't be to you necessarily. In fact, they'll want to send it on to the new company. And it'll have your name, but it'll say, whatever, Fidelity or TD Ameritrade, I guess Schwab now, for the benefit of your name. And it doesn't have your name exclusively. If it has your name exclusively, if you say, I want to take my retirement money with you, and they cut you a check and it says your name and your name alone, and you cash it, you just took a distribution, which is probably not what you wanted to do. You just incurred that 10%, unless you're 59 and a half, you just incurred a 10% penalty. You just incurred a huge taxable event. You just probably screwed up. So be very careful that you roll it over. And anyway, most HR people, most finance people are smart, but I have seen it done, and there's no way to put the toothpaste back in the tube. You are screwed because once that check is cut to you, the note's been sent to the IRS, and they are not a flexible organization. Keogh, another retirement plan for self-employed. Yep. Pre-tax income, so same 401k type setup. SEP. So I think we went through this. Am I going backwards? So traditional IRA. Since they're using the term traditional, that's good, but most people just say IRA. If it's a Roth, technically Roth IRA is the correct term for that type of thing. This is not a Roth IRA. This is a traditional IRA. This is the one where the taxes are paid on it, or taxes are not paid on it, and it's tax deferred. Roth is not tax deferred. So anyway, contributions may or may not be tax deductible depending on how much you've contributed. Interest earned is tax deferred, which is nice. Tax and penalty on withdrawals before 59 and a half. Roth IRA. So they don't want everybody to do it. If you're a millionaire, you're not going to be able to do this. Taxpayers over 50, not a great plan to try and double up to catch up, but they will allow you to add more money. And if you're like in a panic, it's not going to have much time to work. You're age 50 and you're going to be pulling out probably in 15 years. Would have been a lot better to put in, a tenth of that money back when you're 25, but that ship has sailed, so do what you can. So Roth versus traditional. So contributions are shelter from taxes until withdrawn. So that's the advantage of the traditional over the Roth. And the advantage of the Roth, the money you pull out is tax-free. So all those capital gains are tax-free. Yeah, if you're not, it depends on where your tax rate is, your marginal tax rate, so whatever your tax rate. If you're not making a whole lot of money doing a 401k, maybe less advantageous. Maybe you should just take that money and put it into a Roth. But if you're making a ton of money, well, you're going to be giving a significant chunk of it to the government. So maybe you want to do the tax deferred. Anyway, you're looking at two different things when you put the money in and when you take the money out. Annuity, they're using this in a fairly narrow sense. Annuity can also be used in, well, an insurance sense, but annuity just means a series of annual payments. In this case, they're doing it in a sense where, let's say, an insurance company offers an annuity, and that's the problem. They're typically, you find these things, if they start selling them, through websites or brokerages, maybe it'd be a better deal. But the problem with most annuities, they're like a life insurance product, and so there's a salesman involved, so there's a commission charged up front, and it's not necessarily great. And the returns are less because they're not as great with investing money as straight investors are. Their insurance companies, by their nature, have to be very cautious when they're investing. So anyway, but the concept with annuity is, let's say you give the company 10 grand and they start giving you $100 a month from now for the rest of your natural life. If you only live a couple weeks, too bad. But if you live to be 100, you won. So it's, in a sense, it's kind of the opposite of life insurance. Life insurance, you got to die to get the money. In annuity, the longer you live, the more money you get. So it is kind of, glass half full in that regard. But augments a retirement plan, maybe. Fixed versus variable, yeah, it depends on the characteristics of it. And there's so many different variants. It would get explained to you, and that's the problem. The salesman that's explaining it to you, he's making his income off of your investment funds. Variable annuity based on the performance of select investment vehicles. So it can change. It's not going to be necessarily a fixed rate. It's going to depend on how well they're doing investing. High fees are a disadvantage. So that's that commission. Surrender charge. Yeah, if you try and take it all. You say, I want my 10 grand back. The deal's off. Yeah, they're probably going to be happily to give it to you because they're going to charge you a big whopping fee. Commission salespeople. No load annuities. Yeah. So these are maybe becoming a thing, but, annuities are kind of not something you see all the time. Most people do not have them. Mutual funds, just about everybody will end up having them. Even people who say, oh, I never invest in the stock market. And then you find out, yeah, you're investing in the stock market. I mean, as an Alaskan, if you're getting the PFD, you're investing in the stock market. That's what the PFD fund, it's not tied to the price of oil. That's what generated the PFD money that's invested. They're just another basically mutual fund company. And unfortunately, I haven't looked at their portfolio lately, but a lot of it was commercial real estate, which is kind of sucky after COVID. A lot of commercial real estate is vacant and just not doing well, but hopefully we'll get some money. Anyhow, so future retirement stuff. So what we looked at, on those Excel sheets from day one is far more powerful than this. They're just showing you how much your money can grow. 6% annual return. I would want to get more than that. I would want at least, again, I'm not being greedy or unrealistic. 10 is pretty much kind of a rate that you ought to seek. If you end up with 6, it's not the end of the world, but that's not going to do a whole lot above inflation at this rate. Number of years. So again, we learned way more than this. If you're confused by this stuff, go back and look at those Excel spreadsheets, and it's far more dramatic and more educational. Amount of money. Yep. So again, 6%. You can see 10%. It's a lot more than double, and 6, whatever. You can see the different rates because of the compounding effects. The rich get richer. The 12%, whatever, quadruples the 6% rather than doubles the 6%. So, interesting stuff. Tax benefits from retirement account. Yeah. Just some math you can kind of look at it and figure it out. But again, a 401k is just most cases something you certainly want to do, but look at your own circumstances and look at some of the guidance that's out there. Again, any of those when you're doing this paper, this is a chance to go in there and look and decide what is a good deal for you and what's not, and get you squared away. So retirement planning is when you're alive, right? We were planning for that, and you definitely won the lottery now. You made it all the way, and you have estate planning, which means you're no longer here, but you want some control over what's going to happen to your estate. So it's nice to end up with an overage. There's a thing about having your final check to the funeral parlor bounce, that you're completely out of money. But most people can't plan their life with that sort of certainty. And then also you've got your legacy, your kids, maybe a charity, maybe whatever. You want some control over that. If you don't take charge, the government's happy to roll in and take it. So when we're talking estate planning, we're talking deceased person. And sometimes it's a little difficult because people don't want to talk about dying and the rest of it. So this is probably something that's good to talk about when everybody's healthy and that'll never happen kind of thing, and do all that planning. A will means a certain thing. There's only one type of real will. I shouldn't even have to say real will. People will talk about, I've got, something written down on whatever, or I've got a holographic will or a living will or some other. Do you have a will that's recognized by the state in which you live, that's signed off by you and the lawyers? If not, you don't have a will. You've got a big waste of time, and your stuff is going to end up in court. Your beneficiaries, your relatives, your whoever you've designated are they're not going to get much, if anything, because the lawyers are going to be involved, the court's going to be involved, the delays. You really did not do a favor for these people because you blew it. You didn't have a will. A will is not that hard to do, and if you die without a will, that's called intestate. Intestate is the term that's used for not having a will. And you go to probate court. Probate court's a state court, so that's why wills are individual to each state. But you can imagine that, I'm sure family court's probably worse than probate court, but I don't know. It's the same sort of situation. You're dealing with people that didn't plan. The court's not super motivated because these people clearly didn't care. So why should we care? Just give the money away, do whatever with it. We'll get to it when we get to it. It's just not a good situation. Probate court is overworked, not responsive. They don't have all their customers are dead. But anyway, so don't do that. Reasons for having a will. Ensure that your estate is distributed as you desire. Beneficiary heirs, the person specified, those are the people who are going to get the money. So there's that term I was using. Intestate, dying without a will. Court appoints an administrator who may not make the decisions you preferred. This is not going to be a strong swimmer in the legal world. This is not going to be, this guy didn't have a lot of options getting out of law school. He made it through, but I'm sorry if there's probably a lawyer out there. But anyway, they don't make movies about these people. So to create a will, you got to be of legal age, mentally competent, not under duress. Must be signed and dated. If it's not signed and dated, or if it's not found, if you do this great will and then you hide it somewhere or lock it away, somebody needs to do it. 2 or 3 witnesses, not a big deal. I usually go into legal office, lawyer's office, whatever, but I go to the legal office up on base because it's free as a retired guy. But anyway, they just, hey, they call people over from random people walking by. Hey, sign this. All they got to do is look at me and look at the will and sign. They don't have to know me. They don't care. It just makes it legal. Attorney is recommended. Pretty much necessary. So, doesn't mean you got to spend a bunch of money on this. It means you figure out, who does wills. It's going to be some attorney's office, but what you're looking for is a paralegal. Paralegals are, they're like a lawyer without the bar and without all the whatever. They work for a reasonable wage, whereas lawyers work for $2.50 or whatever per hour. So time is money. You go in there, figure out what their method is for getting a will. It's usually going to be some website that they have you go in and punch all your data into. They do some word processing to it. You have an appointment. You come in there. They hand it to you. You say, "Oh, that looks good," and then they sign it. And bada bang. It went through the lawyer's office, but you may or may not meet the lawyer. You really don't care because you don't need to spend that kind of money. An attorney is not going to have to do it. And you don't make it super specific either. This thing should last for years. Unless you move states or unless, I don't even know if marriage would do it. Divorce would probably upset it. But because you move houses, because you have more children, none of that necessitates a new will if it's done properly. You don't say, and to my third cousin, I want to give my fishing right. No, keep all that stuff out of it. You just say, I want all of my assets equally divided amongst my children. Done, and that's it. You have 3 to 10 children. It's just equal shares amongst them all. I mean, there may be reasons to get more specific, but it's the more specific the will, actually, the less, more contestable, the less powerful. All these dramatic reveals like they do in the TV where one person gets nothing and the other one gets, that's, those people, they do have lawyers who do this stuff, and revise it continually. For the rest of us, we don't need that. We just want something so that we're not intestate, so that they can sort out our things. So, anyway, yeah. So a simple will, whatever. I don't like that they're using these different terms. There's just a will, but you can put different things in it. Yeah. There's probably a statute within the state. If you don't specify something, then it'll go by law. But again, it's not automatic. It's got to go through probate court, which means the lawyers and all that stuff get a little share. If you have a will, it's going to frustrate the lawyers and all that because there's no money in it. It's your instructions are specified, and it will probably go into what am I talking about? A trust account. All your assets will be sold. They'll be going to this trust account. Then that trust account, once everything's done, will all be issued out to the beneficiaries as stated, and then boom, the trust account goes away, and that's your final thing. Distribution of the estate. Executor. Yeah, there may be a person who hires the lawyer, who hires the person who's going to take care of it. You don't necessarily have to put a huge burden on a person. There's lawyers who do this stuff in your stead. But if the will's done properly, it can almost be done as a self-help kind of thing. But yeah, this whole thing of, selling vehicles and getting rid of everything and putting all the proceeds into the estate and then distributing the estate. If you got kids, yeah, it gets more difficult. Guardians and things like that. Definitely needs to be signed. Funeral arrangements, yeah, whatever. I don't know. It depends on your religious beliefs and upbringings, but most people don't put too much emphasis on, people that are passed. I mean, anyway, not going there. Changing your will. So you may have to change your will at a certain point if you move to a different state or if you marry or divorce. So, but again, if it's written, goes to my wife, well, if you don't have a wife, then bada bang, that situation's kind of taking care of it. Major changes, but you probably made it too specific. Codicil. This is almost not really a thing anymore. A codicil would be it's like a contract rider. It's like an addendum. It's like an extra document that modifies a contract or modifies a will. in the day of word processor and people aren't typing these things out by hand, you just print out a new one because it's got to be signed again anyway. So why not just print out a clean, fresh will? Call it good. Probate, that's that process. And again, it's the state court. So when you move from state to state, the laws are going to be slightly different, necessitating a new will. Yeah. And you can get somebody to do this, executor, files forms, probate. You can just hire a dude, perhaps even getting back to the paralegal type thing, where you get somebody who's got legal skills, but, maybe works under somebody's license, but is not charging you $250 an hour for clerical work. Here's a sample will. Yep. Yeah, you can make it more specific. Again, I even think this is too broad. Give it to the beneficiaries. If they blow it all, so be it. Guardian, you don't necessarily have this sorted just because you have something in your will, especially when people change and things like that. You need more of a personal arrangement in my mind, but it doesn't hurt, I guess. Some signatures. Addresses of the witnesses, never seen that. I think that's a Colorado thing or something because it doesn't happen here in Alaska. I don't even know. It's one of those things you look at the will, and it's just usually random employees in the legal firm themselves, but they're clearly not putting their address down. They're just signing just to make it legal. Estate taxes, you'd be surprised. The estate taxes are the levels are pretty high. You have to have basically millions before they start coming after you. Now, it can't happen with a farm. If you're somebody who's got a lot of property but not a whole lot of income, which is typical of a lot of farmers, yeah, they can take the farm basically because when that person passes, they, will pass that farm on to somebody else. So the smart money is that's why we're calling it estate planning, right? You plan so this doesn't happen. I have whatever the little LLCs I have children listed as members. It's a transition. It's not a major tax event. And as you get older and worse health, hopefully you see things coming. If you're in that situation, you hire a lawyer, sort this out, and you can generally avoid these estate taxes if it's that farm situation or some sort of situation where it's going to be an ongoing business. If you're having a sole proprietorship, yeah, and we'll get more into business formation stuff, but you've kind of screwed yourself, and you've kind of demonstrated that you're not so smart in legal things anyway if you've got a sole proprietorship, because my problem, your problem, anybody's problem has got a sole proprietorship, and I don't. Because if you do, you've got unlimited liability. Let's say you're driving down the road, you're a painter or something. Ladder falls off the truck and causes some horrific accident. They're going to take everything you got, plus your house, plus everything else. If that would have been an LLC, a limited liability company, they would take things related to the business. They couldn't touch your personal assets. They couldn't touch other things. So anyway, when you get to that point, there's lots of reasons not to be a sole proprietorship. But if you were a sole proprietorship and you had a business and you die, you're going to get brutalized on taxes. Determine the state taxes. So anyway, yeah. Some of the limits, 11, yeah, that's 11 million, isn't it? That's a big number. Sorry. Trying to get back. So, yeah, I didn't even update it. The numbers have gone up higher now. Yeah, they can be high when you get into that range. But guess what? People who have that kind of money, they have those kind of lawyers. And very few people are paying that 40%, I guarantee you. Proper planning can reduce these taxes. That should be in bold print. People don't pay that. Those wealth taxes and stuff, they sound good on paper. They sound great in elections. but they're not collected. People move, they do what they got to do, but they're not doing that. Yep. If you live in California, New York, it's got to be worse. And yep. Yeah, you want to keep track of that to make sure that you're under that limit. And if not, change things while you're living, while you're planning. Once you die, it's things are set in time, so don't let that happen. That's where estate planning comes in. You can get under those limits by just giving stuff away. So fair enough. If you're smart about it, and and it doesn't mean you're cheap. I mean smart in a positive way. Let's say I want this land to stay in a park light setting forever and all that kind of stuff. Well, why not just do that now? You can arrange with different organizations, and you could whatever. Just a couple I've worked with, Great Land Trust and a few other people, where you would essentially give up your right to develop that land. You'd put a covenant on it where it can't be subdivided and turned into whatever. So, I mean, and if you do that, then your property taxes are going to go down to negligible amounts. In fact, my daughter was going to a private school in Georgia, and isolated in the center of the school was this big, huge house, and the school had circled around this house. And it was an old guy, and he upon his death, that home would be donated to the school for the real estate value. But in exchange for that, he doesn't have to pay taxes, not one bit of property taxes. That's the deal he worked out. Well, that old dude's living, I think he was like 93. I mean, the school's like, just die already. We want our land. But anyway, I mean, there are things like that. If you're going to be a very, nice person, no reason you can't enjoy that benefit. It doesn't diminish your gift in any way, but you can give them more if you're paying less in taxes. You can tell that I'm not looking at the U.S. government as a charitable institution. I mean, I realize some taxes do good things, but anyway, enough said. Living trust. Yeah, sometimes, assign the management of your assets while you're living. Revocable living trust. So that living trust, that's kind of what I was teetering on with a trust where you donate property. But you're not going to get very far with a revocable living trust, where you say, okay, I'm planning on donating all this, but don't hold me to it. I can revoke this anytime I want. Yeah, they're not going to give you any tax benefit from that. Irrevocable means I'm selling it or I'm giving it to these guys upon my death. I'm not changing it. Then they're going to deal with you. But there's no take-backs on situations like that. Standard family trust. So, and anyway, different ways to work things out. You can say, hey, I'm getting close to dying here. I'm going to start doling out money to the children's. Stay below those limits. Again, you give all the money you want to charity. They absolutely don't care. If you're a high wealth individual and you're saying the government's going to take 40% of that, you can say, hell they are. I'm going to give that part that exceeds the tax-free limit away to a charity of my choice. And there you go. And the government approved it as a charity. They said it was a reasonable charity, so that's on them. Living will. Okay, so they're using this will term in a situation that's not a will in my case. So that's why I don't like that. But yeah, you can do things like this, a legal document that, whatever, pull the plug, different things, give instructions. But power of attorney, they're using this in a very limited case. Power of attorney is a super strong document. That gives somebody the right to act in your stead. So let's say, you're leaving the state, and you've got a car left behind, and you're like, I can't get to this right now. Can you sell this car for me? I'm going to give you a power of attorney, but don't do anything with the rest of my stuff. Well, if you just do the verbal part, don't do anything with the rest of my stuff, you completely screwed up. if you're going to write a power of attorney, you should never do a general power of attorney. You should do a limited power of attorney and say, in the details related to my vehicle, VIN number such and such, I authorize this person to sell and do whatever. If you just give them a power of attorney means, you want him to sell your car and you come back and the house is gone too. And he had the rights to sell it. So power of attorney, general power of attorney is just way too broad. Just shouldn't be done. It should be some sort of a limited power of attorney addressing whatever specific thing you need done by somebody else for you. Durable power of attorney for healthcare. So again, we're getting into healthcare things that I'm not comfortable in a personal finance course. It's a little bit beyond the scope. Estate plan documents. This is super key though. Where's your will? Where are your inventory? Where are even account numbers? I mean, insurance companies are not just randomly going to check on people to see if they died every year. You got to know that policy exists, and your beneficiaries need to know so they can go call the insurance company and go, oh, by the way, here's a death certificate. I think he had a policy with you. So in order to get everything done, you need to keep good records, but they need to be accessible. And you can have multiple copies of your will, so that's a good thing. So don't all have them in one spot hidden away. Not good. And as long as you're doing it, have all these other neat things. You don't necessarily, the credit card company people, they will definitely come find you. You need to worry about that. Ownership's of businesses, that's all recorded on government websites. But some stuff, use your own information. Ownership of other real estate, that's documented. Mortgage company, they're fully aware. The recorder's got all that. But some of the stuff would maybe make things easier. But the big thing is the will. Recent tax return. IRS keeps those. Bank account. Yeah. All this stuff will work out. But you need to know. I mean, these things would probably sort themselves out. The companies would probably start sending you something. But anyway, so no homework this week other than working on that personal finance project. In fact, I got another one that I got to review. So a few people have sent them in to me. If you don't, whatever, that's on you. If you want, just a quick perusal. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, and I'm not going to do a whole bunch. I may say it's lacking this or lacking that, but I will tell you, if you don't do any more than this, you'll get a B. I would add another page or go into this subject, and you'll get the A you want. So the grade you get is, the grade you want. So if you want an A, it's fully within your power. So keep in mind, too, as we get close to the end here, do not look at your grade up there and go, oh, I've got an A, so I don't have to do any more assignments. Well, at a certain point, uncompleted assignments all switch to 0. So it's not like you get an F on those. You get worse than an F. I mean, an F in most people's mind is 50%. You get 0. So don't let that happen. That'll knock you down a full grade or so. But if you do things like, your video comments, nobody gets less than a 5. That's 100%. You can maybe have not got the score you wanted on the midterm, but still easily get an A because you got 100% on all the small assignments. So, but if the inverse is true, if you get zeros on the piddly stuff and you did great on the midterm, you're getting a B at best. So it's up to you. Good luck, and talk next week.